going on YouTube? This is Marcus again with another character corner. I want to do something a little bit differently. I've been thinking about how I want to approach this video for quite a while now, so hopefully this comes out the way that I want to explain it. So here goes. Normally I would start with the main character and kind of work my way towards the other characters, but I wanted to start with one of the antagonists. When I posted this picture and did the subtitles, it actually got banned and blocked from Instagram because of the wording that I said. And so I'm not really happy about that, but we're just gonna have to make it do what it do. So this is Ellis White. This is a character that I created. He is a cop and he is a coon, and that was the wording that I used that got it flagged from Instagram, which that's what I meant to say, which I find it fascinating how you can post all sorts of things and even soft porn, but if I mention a character that I created myself, and it didn't help that this character is also a policeman, then I guess that's one of the reasons why I quote unquote violated the rules and the statutes of Instagram. But with that being said, I wanted to start with this character because what this character reminds me of is it reminds me of the so-called Sambos. I know a lot of people will say Uncle Tom, but let's clarify some things. One of the things that people forget is that Uncle Tom was actually the good slave, or the good guy, so to speak, in the book. He was the charismatic guy who, because of wrong circumstances, ended up dying before he can actually get his freedom, if I remember right from the books. And so it was actually Sambo who was the slave that collaborated with the master and made things harder for all the other slaves. And so in essence, Ellis represents that type of character. He tries to ingratiate himself with the white establishment, and as a cop, he actually persecutes the same people that he is supposed to protect. In the story, I wrote him having a white wife and a biracial daughter. And one of the reasons why I did that was because I wanted to give people and the readers a visual as far as how far this guy is willing to go. He antagonizes not only the hero, but he antagonizes his alter ego, or the original ego, Malik. Now, let's put things in perspective here. Just to kind of reiterate a little bit about what Malik is. Malik is a entrepreneur. He is far from the stereotypical, quote unquote black person that you would think in terms of being in trouble, being a threat, being an AKA thug, which I don't subscribe to those terms because those are negative connotations, but it does not matter to Ellis White. Ellis is the kind of guy who hates who he is, and so therefore he projects his hatred towards other people. And I wanted to write this kind of a character to where he had some sort of a backstory in which it is not going to be revealed in this book, but I plan on giving him more of a backstory in terms of why he feels the way that he feels in the current novel that I'm working on right now. So and as a quick note, I want to be able to say something about the current novel now. The current novel has, I have about maybe 43 to about 45,000 words. So that's actually the equivalent of like a short novel now. Because nowadays novels are considered if they have 40,000 words. And so clearly I'm beyond that, but as you would know with my stories, I don't like to just shortchange stories. I like to be able to complete full arcs and full stories and give you the full context of what's going on in my stories. But getting back to Ellis White, one of the things that I want people to get out of Ellis White is that even though he is probably going to be one of the most one-dimensional characters in this story, I did give a sort of a mystery glimpse like, for example, I'm not going to overly explain it in this book per se, but like I said, I plan on explaining it on this final novel that I have, because I'm going to use that final to kind of tie everything together. But he has a picture that he looks at pretty much every time he looks into his locker. He has a locker in his house when he comes home, and he converses with his wife. Now, maybe in a future episode, I'm kind of thinking about that. Uh, you know, putting his wife, but his wife also has some sort of a backstory as well too, that ties into what's going on in this main story. So I'm not going to focus too much on her yet, but what I am going to do is I am going to conclude with Ellis White. And one of the things that people should understand about Ellis White is that I wanted to make a personification in terms of why people are sellouts, the mindset that goes between sellouts. And it's easy to just say the simple tropes such as they hate themselves, they want to appease master, and this and that. But I wanted to actually drive home the deep-rooted hatred he has within himself, and how he expresses that through his decisions, through his actions, and also through his mannerisms when he engages with other people, and when he does overly, or he overcompensates in order for him to be able to show the establishment that he's willing to play ball, so to speak. So transitioning, excuse me, it's been a long day, but that being said, transitioning into the next picture is Shadowmoor. Now, this is Malik's alter ego, Shadowmoor, and I created the name because, one, shadows represent darkness, and I wanted to redefine definitions, because words matter, and the definition of words matter. And so when we've been taught as a people that black is bad and white is good, now, it does something to the psyche to where we start to self-loathe ourselves. We start to have a certain level of low self-esteem about ourselves. And I want to reiterate one point. And one of the points I wanted to reiterate is that I do not hate anybody. Let's just put that out there. I know that I might get some backlash when I use some of these terms and the way that I write the books. By no means am I trying to say that, you should go out there and kill this or you should kill that. But what I wanted to emphasize and write in story form is this is actually the reality that we live as foundational black Americans. And so with Shadowmoor, once again, the first part being shadow, he works in the shadows. Basically, he works in the cover of night. He has a modified leather jacket with a hood and a mask, and it only reveals his eyes. And of course, Moor represents the black people, or what we were known as before we were known as Negroes, or niggas and all that type of stuff. But with that being said, with Moor, one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted people to learn what it feels like to have a sense of pride of where you come from and who you are. And so when Malik discovers these powers, one of the things that he does, and I'll say a little bit about his story, is that when he sees the death of his grandfather, the man that he never knew existed until like the last few months of his life, he starts getting these visions. And these visions are basically deep-rooted memories from his ancestors. And so once he gets a certain level of consciousness, then the powers that have been passed down generationally began to manifest themselves in the form of the Draco Cerninja. And that's what these eyes represent. These eyes, if you've noticed, they kind of look like reptilian slits. It means dragon sight in Latin. I use two Latin words, dragon and sight, to be able to make a compound word, and that's where I got the word Draco Cerninja. So I want to talk a little bit about the essence of the Draco Cerninja. So With the Draco Ninja, it is the ability to not only see well beyond the range of a human, but you're also able to see within living things. You're able to see receptors. And in my book, I call receptors the electrical and the biological electrical impulses that generate anything that we do, whether if it's running, breathing, even thinking and speaking. And so this gives Shadowmoor an advantage because he's able to ascertain what his enemies are thinking before they even think the thoughts. Now, I wanted to make this a little different from telepathically, because I didn't want him to be able to read minds. I wanted him to be able to understand nature itself. And so with the Draco Ninja is supposed to embody, it is supposed to embody our connection with Mother Earth. And is interesting as that may sound, I want people to understand this aspect in terms of, as a people, we've always had a spiritual connection to the earth. Hence why we, had the ability to, grow things. We had the ability to, even as slaves, we had the ability to be able to pick out which plants were herbs and which plants were poisonous, and add those type of ingredients to, food that was, deemed to be unworthy, in the sight of the masters. And so, getting back to this character of Shadowmoor, one of the main things that I wanted to emphasize is that I wanted to emphasize that even though he has these powers, he still has a lot to learn. And so normally when you think of superpowers or superhumans or superheroes, you think of some sort of an external accident or external force that causes the being to become powerful. Like, for example, when you think of Spider-Man, he was bitten by a radioactive spider. When you think of Power Man, he goes through this chemical, enhancement experiment that allows him to be impervious to a lot of things, and so forth and so on. With Shadowmoor, I wrote him differently. I wrote him where, in order for him to unleash his power, he needed to be self-sufficient, in a sense that he needed to know who he was. And that was the premise of the book Fireline, which basically means, your lineage. Because with Shadowmoor, or Malik didn't know who he was. He always felt like something was dormant inside of him. And so I wanted to relate to somebody who has always wondered, okay, where did that come from? What's going on with me, or why do I feel or have this different mindset that other people have? And so kind of right before we started using terms like foundational Black Americans, the terms have always been there, but when I was writing this book, I was thinking to myself, like, we kind of do think differently from other diasporas. And once again, this is no disrespect, this is no slight to Africans or Caribbeans or people from other ethnicities. We just have our own unique experience and our own unique culture. And that is something that nobody on this earth shares. Nobody on this earth has ever been enslaved in America, has deliberately been devoid of our self of identity, devoid of our languages, devoid of our even names, and even our own religions and gods. And so what Shadowmoor represents is, Shadowmoor is a manifestation of what he learns about himself. So the longer that he stays within himself, in terms of the more that he learns more about his heritage, the more he connects with his ancestors, the more that he understands the essence of what his ancestors built and who they are, the stronger he becomes. And so that was what I wanted to write, and this is what I think is different from some of the other superheroes, is that he learns how to manifest his powers through the memories and the thoughts of his ancestors. And sometimes, and I'll give like kind of a quick side story before I go any further. So with Shadowmoor, he grows up in Greensboro, North Carolina. Now, at the time, I wrote it because my sister lives in Greensboro, North Carolina. Shout out to Ramonica if she ever gets a chance to hear this. And at the time, I'm thinking it's an homage, to, her living in North Carolina. So I wrote it where he grows up in North Carolina, away from his roots in Atlanta. Little did I realize that when I was sought out by a long lost cousin from my dad's side, she not only filled in some of my family tree. When I re-registered to Ancestry.com, I realized two potent things. One was that my great great grandfather was born in North Carolina. I'm still trying to figure out where he, how far back he goes, because with the Bolton last name, I've hit a dead end. But it says in the first census that he has shown, he was born in North Carolina. He and his wife moved to Georgia, and I find that interesting because the book takes place in Atlanta, Georgia. So it goes back to with one of the powerful mentors and teachers, Dr. Kaba Kamene. Hopefully I didn't butcher his name. He's actually a great guy. If you guys get a chance, listen to him and go to his Instagram. But Kaba talked about how when you are spiritual, you're deeply rooted within your ancestors, and your ancestors start to talk to you. And I thought that was interesting. But then when I did the research of my own lineage and my own ancestry, I realized, wow, he's right. Because inadvertently, I was actually writing about the journey of my ancestors. The coincidence, I'm not going to even say ironic, I just think it's coincidental that Malik's story is he was born as an orphan and he was taken from Atlanta and they moved him to North Carolina. And so then he moves right back to Atlanta to find his roots. And so it is actually similar to what my earliest ancestors did. So that is something that I wanted to kind of conclude. But one last thing about this character, Shadowmoor, is that he doesn't start out as this powerful being. And I wanted to make this clear throughout the story that sometimes, you get these powers and then you're unstoppable, and then you lose them and then you gain them again. And I wanted to write something different. I wanted to write where, he gets his powers. He gets into a point where he's powerful until he meets an immeasurable force, or a force that defeats him, that has more power than he does. And instead of seeking revenge, he goes within himself. And he realizes that, well, the reason why he's not as powerful as he needs to be is because he hasn't fulfilled his journey of what they call the 10 trials of the Moors. And so it's actually his own journey of manhood. Now, keep in mind, Shadowmoor is in his early 20s at this time. He's freshly out of college and, and owning his own company and things like that. But he never really went through the type of manhood that our ancestors and our people have done for thousands of years. And so by reconnecting with his ancestors, he essentially reconnects with himself, and he reconnects with some of the entities that was hidden or deliberately trashed away, so that way he would never gain the access or the knowledge of who he is. And so that is one of the most important things I wanted to emphasize on this book. Now, before I end this video, I got one more quick announcement. My latest book, Fireline Generational Burst, is now on Amazon, the hard copy. Before, there were some issues with the distribution, but now if you type in my name, Marcus Bowden, you should be able to see both books, and both books are available on Amazon.com. You can also get them in Barnes & Noble, eBay, and things like that. But I wanted to take this time to talk to you about these two main characters, Ellis White and Shadowmoor, and going more in depth with Draco Cernentia. So thank you again for taking the time to watch this video. Please subscribe, make comments, let me know what you think. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So have a good one, and I'll see you in the next Character Corner.